what problems are being talked about and which problems should be talked about?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really hard question. I mean, I think part of it is, as a technologist, you really want to think about the problems that you're closest to. I think it's very dangerous for a technologist to kind of try to find a problem that they know very little about and build a solution for it. So typically, I think a really good approach is finding people that are in industries that have problems, and going down as a technologist and interviewing them and spending time talking. That's what's interesting about a state like North Carolina. You have so many old school businesses and industries that need assistance, that if you could, from a policy making standpoint, find a way to kind of connect the technologist in your state and some of these industries that are having a challenge innovating, and get them in a room together and just talk and listen and learn, there's a lot that you could accomplish. And there's a concept in the tech world called an incubator, basically. And it's just, that's what you do. You sit down and you just spend a ton of time learning about a problem, talking to the people who are experiencing that problem every day, and just ideating on solutions, throwing out what doesn't work, doubling down on what does until you come up with a solution that makes sense. And then once you have a solution that makes sense, that's 90% of the battle. Building it is actually very easy. And so when I think about technological innovation in North Carolina, it's not rocket science. We have to be willing to listen to the people who are experiencing the problem every single day. That's when technology works. It's when you're building tech in a room by yourself and not talking to the people experiencing the problem that you make a lot of mistakes. And I think you could probably abstract that to policy more broadly. I mean, if you think about issues in public schools, I think a lot of the problem is
public education. That's totally where I was thinking in my mind. Like, I see there being a huge need for people to come together in a room and have big idea conversations about public education.
Yeah. And it's one of my biggest complaints I have with kind of many people in the tech and the VC world, is because that's how they actually model their businesses. So when if a venture capitalist is talking to a technology entrepreneur, and that technology entrepreneur goes to them and says, I don't have any experience with this problem. I don't know anyone who's experienced the problem. I'm not talking to people experiencing the problem, but here's my solution. That venture capitalist would sprint out of the room. They wouldn't give them a penny. But then you see the same venture capitalists and tech people pontificating about policy, and they're doing that exact same thing. They're not bringing in public school teachers and counselors to talk about the problems that we're dealing with in education. They're not talking to the actual on-the-ground subject matter experts. And so they're kind of doing the exact opposite of their entire business model that actually made them wealthy in the first place, And there's a reason for that. It's incentives. They have a clear incentive to do it when they're investing in other companies, because that's how they make money. But in the world of public policy, what's their incentive? Lower their taxes.
That's right. That's right. So we've been saying technology and technological advances and stuff. And I think it's important for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's listening to this conversation. And can you give us an example of it? So when I think of like technological advances, just for the layman's terms, we have AI right now. Like everybody uses ChatGPT. It makes it easier for me to write an email. Or, you said now with technology, we can take where somebody had 100 programmers doing stuff, we could use 5 now to do it. And so that's saying to me that we're going to be losing jobs. I have self-checkout. Technology has got to this. What are some examples of how being a tech person can go and help businesses, or a mom and pop business?
Instead of on this massive corporate
Instead
scale.
of this massive scale of just being out, like, we're going to lay off all of our workers now because now we have this machine that does everything that you guys do.
Yeah.
And I bet this ties probably into the business impact forum in some way. I mean, I don't know. I'm just taking a leap of logic there, but I would imagine that connecting with, because we have a lot of small business owners in this state, and helping them appreciate and implement advances in technology is really important.
Well, I don't know what an advance in technology is, like going into public schools. So an example of that, what I'm just thinking is ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when I think about technological innovation, it's how do we empower somebody to make their life easier, to accomplish whatever the task is they're trying to accomplish. And so that applies to anything. So it could be, a teacher in a classroom better connecting with their students and being able to better communicate with parents and their families in real time about what's working, what's not working. Things like Classroom Dojo, which is a software solution that a lot of educators across the country are using.
We use it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's, again, it has the ability to not just benefit large companies looking to enhance their bottom line. It can help individuals. It can help people in the private sector, the public sector, really across the board. But I think the key, again, it comes down to actually listening to those folks to begin with. So from a policy standpoint, if you're talking about issues in public schools and you're talking about technological innovation in public schools, the starting point has to be sitting down with those teachers, sitting down with those counselors, sitting down with those parents, those families, and listening to them. If you're trying to build tech, again, from a distant place, you're not going to solve their problems. You're going to build a solution to the wrong problem, and no one's going to get any value out of it. So I think that's one response I would have. I think the other issue, and this is part of the reason why I think people have an issue with tech, is there are costs to innovation. And you talked about lost jobs.
Change, right?
It's creative destruction.
Yeah.
And it's creative
the cost isn't just monetary.
Yeah, it's a small businesses. I mean, think about Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon, incredibly innovative company. They solved a major problem. People need to be able to efficiently find and buy products at the lowest possible price and without having to travel to get it. They want it at their doorstep within 24 hours. And they solved that. Books. Yeah, and they've solved that problem, better than any other company ever. But there were costs to that, unintended consequences. It wasn't maybe part of their goal, but at the end of the day, a lot of small businesses were shut down. And that has a significant impact on some of those local economies. It was a jobs engine for a lot of these places. And people look at that and they see wealthy Jeff Bezos.
Right.
and it's natural for them to start to think of tech as bad, as Amazon as bad. And I think my response to that would be, that's where the government needs to come in and manage the unintended consequences of innovation. I don't think we want to slow down innovation. We want to hold our elected representatives accountable to say, what are you going to do to make sure that people that lost their jobs because of this really positive thing are going to be in a position where they can get the skills they need to get new jobs in the 21st century, or at least a safety net where in some cases, if you're mid to late 50s, you're not going to be able to become a software developer. And so how do you at least create a safety net, a system where you minimize those costs and put people that are on the wrong side of innovation in a position where they can still continue to have a high quality of life? And if they're not doing that, that's the policymaker that should be held accountable, not necessarily an Amazon or a technology company like that. Now, I will say, because I imagine there's some people who are listening to this who really do not like Amazon. Amazon has engaged in anti-competitive practices. So this gets back to the beginning conversation around the goal should be maximizing competition. And there are times where Amazon didn't just outcompete, they intentionally made it impossible for small businesses to compete with them. And we should have a policy framework that makes that not possible.